Greetings. My name is Jason Morano, and we're here to talk about today Quest Security Guardian and what is Tier Zero. We're going to cut past the marketing explanation of what Tier Zero is and tell you the Microsoft Quest way that we will help analyze your Tier Zero objects and help you clean up the hygiene around how you manage those objects from attackers. But first, we got to take a small step back and understand why Tier Zero is so important, how it used to look, and it's possibly the way your Tier Zero is actually configured today, and you're looking for a better way of making it more secure. So in the early 24 plus years ago, Microsoft designed it where Active Directory was protected by firewalls, and it was the castle moat concept with a drawbridge that firewalls controlled all traffic getting in and out of your network, and somebody couldn't just simply send an email about a past due invoice where one of your users would open it up. It would install a remote access tool that doesn't require privilege on their machine on the back end, and voila, an attacker is now inside the moat castle wall. And this is why we're seeing so many ransomware attacks and attackers stealing information from businesses, whether it be critical IP, intellectual property, or whether or not it's just records and information that they're going to sell on the black market. So this is the old, and that's why you see the word legacy there, the old on-prem Tier Zero. This was the way it was designed originally, where Tier Zero were domain controllers and privileged servers that had lots of control over your network. They were usually on their own subnet. Maybe you had a separate subnet for your Tier 1 workers, people that worked at the help desk. They had some limited action or activity, or maybe not, to your Tier 0 servers. And then, of course, down at the bottom there was usually your workers, the users' access to the network. However, it was very porous. And Microsoft's permissions, the way we can put groups within groups, everything got very blurry very quickly. And simply just looking at it, you could not figure out that an attacker can plot an attack and take over your Active Directory. However, this trust everything concept of having each one allowed to have the same access essentially on the network to Tier 0 objects became very dangerous. So this is why we are talking to customers to try to move them away from that. And a lot are trying, but they still haven't done it yet. So this is why we're seeing such a high amount of attacks that are very successful in taking over businesses with ransomware. So we're going to go to privilege access strategy. Microsoft has redefined it. Once again, this is all from Microsoft. That's how we designed our Tier 0 collector, is to deal with the privilege access strategy. The concept of once you identify what you have to protect, then you know what you need to do to try to protect it. This zero trust principle concept. No object within Active Directory and within your forest and domain should have unfettered access just based on permissions alone. We should keep them separated. And to talk about that better, we'll use their modern enterprise access model. And this is combined with Azure, but it relates to on-prem and Azure, where my administrative staff, people that have access to domain controllers and privileged servers, ones that are that if they were taken over or accessed, could essentially give the keys to the kingdom to the attacker. They need to be only accessed on privileged access workstations, and there should be two-factor, and there should be privilege access management, and just in time. All of these security principles need to be put in place, and then based on the control plane over here, given only access to what they need below. And users should not mix. There should be no administrator that can gain access through the control plane to a domain controller or any other privileged server. And this would go for SQL people and everybody else managing all of your other servers, going through a privileged access process to gain access to the actual servers. Now, how many of the customers that I speak to are still working on the old legacy one, where it's just on a separate I got a separate subnet for my servers. I got another subnet for floor 1 and floor 2, but really no separation, no real check on who should be accessing what from where. The way that's accomplished is through group policy. And Microsoft lays that out, as well as it is prescribed, and I'll show you that in a second. Let's talk about what is Tier 0 and how we collect it within our solution. So excuse me while I transfer over. So in our user guide, we're going to follow exactly what Microsoft calls out Tier 0 objects in Active Directory. So there's no real thinking here. We're going to be able to use our collector. It's a service account that runs on your network. And all it does is question Active Directory and we're looking for in the responses the privileged access accounts that Microsoft has designated as Tier 0 objects, plain and simple. They could be domain controllers, they could be all kinds of different groups, but in the end, or group policies that affect domain controllers or other privileges, in the end, we're going to match what Microsoft is actually called out right here in their learn.microsoft.com. We're going to pull it all together for you. We're going to make it easy. So when you go into the actual interface, we're going to do that right now. What are you going to find? The first thing you're going to do is look at all the group policies, all your domain controllers or computer objects. You're going to look at all of the objects within Active Directory that we have found are Tier 0, and you're going to want to start certifying them. Like these all affect domain controllers, so I'm going to want to certify them. But identifying is done through our tool. The governance part of the NIST framework, the cybersecurity framework, is already baked in to our solution, and everything is tracked. So if I certify different groups or users, and I go through this hygiene process, what's going to happen on the back end is we're going to make the intelligence within our security assessment have better findings, because we now understand what these privileged accounts are and that they should exist. And in the process, you're going to clean up Tier 0 objects that should not belong on your network any longer. We make it very simple and easy. We pull them in, you go through, you make sure everything is or should be Tier 0. And if you need to add new Tier 0 objects, you know you have a privileged account you created for your AD synchronization. That already has privileges like password synchronization. Those types of items you can add so that when we run our security assessments, you will see findings that will show the weaknesses or exactly what you see here, the types, hygiene, the active hygiene issues that you have that you and your team are going to need to clean up to allow the exposure that the attacker is going to take to carry out their attacks. This recording is about Tier 0 and how we identify it. We pull it in through a service count that is put on one of your member servers. It does an Active Directory lookup. It's a domain user account. It just queries Active Directory looking for the objects that Microsoft has prescribed as Tier 0. We put them here in the solution, and your team will go through and certify them. If there's accounts and items that need to be fixed, you can take them out of their groups or go ahead and lock those accounts and remove the group memberships. But in the end, we will have all of our Tier 0 being analyzed by our tool, giving much better assessments and letting you know where the attackers are, if they're in, as well as how they're going to get in and clean up those hygiene exposure issues along the way. Thank you for listening to this recording.